And welcome back to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of stillcurtain.com. And joining me is co-host and contributor to Still Curtain, Shayne Kubas. Shayne, we are just days away from the NFL draft at this point. When we do our show next week, it'll be the eve of the draft.
Yep.
And we will both share our final predictive mock draft and have an NFL draft roundtable. So don't miss us for next week's show. But today, Shayne, I want to put the focus on Steelers pre-draft visit list. The tracker that I made, we're going to throw up on the screen here for those following us on YouTube, basically tracking their visits from the combine through pro days all the way until now. And we're going to predict the most likely first-round candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers and maybe what they can do in the following rounds. Obviously, they don't have that second-round pick this year.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers just briefly today. Then we're also going to – exactly. We've touched on that enough. We're also going to get to a live 7-round mock draft. We're going to throw up on the screen with you guys, and you can follow along and help us make those selections when we get there. We're going to try to do it predictively. And then by this point next week, we're going to give our final versions of that. So, Shayne, let's dive right in here. And just yesterday, we had the Steelers pre-draft visit list finalized when Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey came to town. Harvey, I think we knew about before that, but Henderson, this caught me by surprise a little bit here because the Steelers already had the pro day dinner meeting with Henderson. They even had a formal combine meeting with Henderson. Now, he's a good football player, but did they get a good enough look at him already? I know some people are upset that this wasn't Kenneth Grant, that this wasn't Walter Nolan. I mean, I know I'm a big Luther Burden fan. Like, bring in somebody that could be in contention for that first-round pick. It looks like Henderson checks those boxes now to be in contention for the 21st overall pick. Shayne, how does that make you feel?
I like Henderson a lot, but I don't love him at 21 or in the first round. I think this being a top 30 visit, I will say I know with the Steelers, and we're going to talk about it a little bit because it does matter a lot. Like the 30 visits, the pro day visits, all that is something that matters for this team. They've shown that in the past. I think things are slightly changing a little bit with Omar Khan now at the helm. I think we might see some differences there. But in general, him checking all of the proverbial boxes that you don't have to check to be a first-round pick for this team doesn't make you feel good because, one, running back shouldn't be the pick unless it's like Ashton Genty, who is not going to be there, I don't think. There's no other running back in this class that's so good that he supersedes the other needs this team has, even a quarterback if there's one there, or defensive lineman, receiver. Like, all these things are, to me, more important positions and bigger needs, especially because there's so many good backs in this class, and they brought a lot of them in. Like, there's going to be guys down the board in the third, and the fourth, and even the fifth and sixth round that might not be as good as Travion Henderson, but are probably not that far off because of how good this class is. So it is a little troubling to me that he's one of the guys that fits the bill to be a first-round pick, although I do think that isn't probably likely.
Yeah, Shayne, it's safe to say the Steelers have done their homework on the running backs this year,
certainly have.
More so than ever that I remember. And it is a remarkable running back class. Like you said, like I like the guys that are going to go in the third and fourth round. I think you're getting really quality players there. And we know that they're going to fall. Like there's just so many of them. We know a lot of those guys are going to slip in the draft. So does it make sense to take a running back that early? And Shayne, from what I last heard, the over under for Travion Henderson right now, 21.5. Are Steelers picking 21. This scares me a lot because he just checks all the boxes outside of playing a somewhat meaningless position. Obviously, we've got Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. There are guys that are impact players. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
In general, though, most running backs are only going to be as good as the scheme and the line in front of them, and it's a poor overall philosophical investment when you think about how to build the foundations of a roster. And so that's where I just hesitate so much here. But Shayne, if we look at Henderson specifically, he has 4 years of production. He was very efficient, and he played at Ohio State. We know the Steelers have Ohio State connections there. Big time athletes in terms of his speed. So he checks the boxes really to be in contention for a first round. That's why on my tracker, which we're going to throw up here in a minute, we're going to see that I put him as a first round player, even though I don't believe that he's a true like round one prospect. I have a 1-2 grade on him. I think he's a good player. I think he should go in the second round, but that's not the feel right now. And from what I've been told, it sounds like he's going to go somewhere in the first round, and that appears to be the case.
Yeah, and I understand for some teams how you could get to the point where he could be in consideration for your first round pick. I think a lot of people kind of see shades of like a Jahmyr Gibbs with him. I don't think he's quite him, though. I will say that. The pass protection is excellent. Like, he's going to be a great day one player on third downs, especially, right? And for teams that are contending, that would potentially be worth a first round pick, because you'll get a team like the Chiefs if all the linemen are wiped out, if the playmakers outside of running back maybe aren't super good there. Would they consider someone like him who could help on third downs, help with the pass protection, stuff like that? Sure. But it's the Chiefs. They can do whatever they want because they have Patrick Mahomes a quarterback. You know, we don't have that luxury, unfortunately. We don't even have one right now, other than if you consider Mason Rudolph to be a starting caliber quarterback, which I would say most of us don't. So we don't have that luxury. But in his over-under being that, it tells you, one, how the league views him, and two, that the Steelers might be one of the reasons that he's up there, frankly. So that's not great in my opinion.
Yeah, Shayne, and I feel like you just look at that overall. It's like the Steelers have so many needs to fill. Can you afford to take the running back that early in such a good running back class? I think that how I operate, Shayne, is unless you have an Ashton Genty level prospect,
right,
not every team should be on board with doing something like this. It should only be the teams that have legitimately cracked that Super Bowl window wide open. It's like anything that can get us over the top at this point to make us in contention, kind of like the Lions were when they took Gibbs. And this was a team that at least had a really talented roster. They hadn't quite broken out yet. And so I did even question it at the time. But the Steelers are not there yet. If we're being real honest, they're not there yet. So I would question that. And we're going to dive into some of these other running back visits here in a second. Shayne, let's talk about Dane Brugler's mock draft that he dropped this morning, Wednesday, the 16th. And I want to kind of just go pick by pick here and start with the first round, some of the names that were available on the board. And this one was interesting. So Dane, who is, for my money, one of the most respected draft voices,
might be the hardest worker in the
bids.
Might be.
He does his homework, and he's really, really good at what he does. He has the Steelers taking Shedeur Sanders, Colorado quarterback, with the 21st pick, not a trade up, having him slide to Pittsburgh at pick 21. And the reasoning, Shayne, and from everything that I've been hearing as well, it makes sense that we could see just a colossal slide for Sanders in the draft. He's going to get past the Browns and the Giants. And for everything, it sounds like you can almost lock those picks in right now. Travis Hunter to the Browns, Abdul Carter to the Giants. If that happens, we're hearing that the Saints don't really like these quarterbacks at all, and they could go just a completely different direction. I know they've got new regime heading there. Kellen Moore's a new head coach. He's going to want to get his guy eventually. And we thought that maybe with the Derek Carr news, that would be a little bit different. That doesn't appear to be the case. And Dane Brugler even said that in his mock. He reiterated this, and I wrote an article about other comments that he said just a day or two ago, that he doesn't believe the Derek Carr injury news with Carr's shoulder injury impacts how the Saints feel about this quarterback class. They just don't like these guys, and maybe they'll take a stab at one on day 2, but I don't think they're going to be willing to take a quarterback at pick 9. And so if Cam Ward goes 1, Hunter and Carter go 2 and 3, that slide for Shedeur could continue, because between pick 9 and pick 21, where the Steelers are, there are no teams that are going to take a quarterback in that stretch. It would have to be a team like the Browns or like the Giants jumping back up from the early 30s to get ahead of the Steelers, which is going to cost them. Do they like a quarterback enough to do that? I don't know if they would. I think that they would be more apt to sit there or wait until at least late in the first round, where the move becomes more manageable. And if they like one that much, Shayne, if they really like one that much, wouldn't they just take one instead of messing around with it? Like, I kind of felt like this. So you go back to like the 2018 draft, the fact that the Ravens, I want to pull my hair out. They took Hayden Hurst, and then they had Lamar fall into their lap later on. And I'm like, that's so frustrating, because the process was so backwards. They should have taken Lamar first. They obviously didn't like him enough over a 24-year-old tight end. Like, the process was wrong. It ended up working out right for them. I think most teams, though, are going to say, if we like a quarterback, we think he's a franchise guy, we're going to take him.
That's the thing about the Ravens example is like I do think part of it was they weren't 100% sold on Lamar, but I also think they knew the league certainly wasn't either. And I think they thought they could get their guy in the at the beginning of the middle of the first round and Hurst, and then wait till the end to come back up, which is so frustrating to think about now because I know I think liked him a lot more than consensus. I certainly did too.
Mm-hmm.
That was very frustrating to see teams continue to pass on him, and the Ravens, of course, are the beneficiaries as they always are in these situations. But anyway, I think the quarterback discussion is really interesting because I do think that if the Saints truly are out on him, if they aren't interested in him at 9, his fall is going to take him either to the Steelers or to wherever a team that still likes him but doesn't love him is willing to pay to come up to get him, right? And I just don't know, and this is the biggest issue with it, is like you said, if the Giants and the Browns like him a lot, he would just be the pick at 2 or 3. I know that Travis Hunter is there. I know Abdul Carter is there. Those are great players. Maybe they want to try to have their cake and eat it too, right? Kind of like what the Ravens did. But if they actually like him enough, I just believe they'd take him. So I don't know if they're going to be willing to trade above the Steelers. I wonder if they're going to call their bluff and say, hey, if you like this guy enough, you could take him at 21. Otherwise, he's going to fall to me anyway. Like, that's what I think is more likely at this point. So then the question becomes, do the Steelers actually like him enough? They've shown interest in him clearly, but so have other teams. Like, do they like him enough as well to take a 21? Do they prefer someone like a Jalen Milroe, which is a whole other conversation that we've talked about? Whatever the case may be, I think that is a decision that they might have to decide. Like, they might have to make that decision when before we didn't think that was going to be in the cards.
Yeah, and it's a question worth asking for sure because we're looking at the Steelers in a need for a quarterback. The Browns need a quarterback. What are they going to do? Huge AFC North implications here because if Shedeur ends up being really good, somebody's getting a good player. If he ends up being bad, well, then you could set your franchise back a little bit again. But I agree with you. I do think the Browns are more apt to just sit where they are or maybe move up a few spots to get that back into the first round, get a 5th-year option, maybe something like that. But they're not going to sell the farm, I don't think, for a chance to get Shedeur. And so it makes you think that, yeah, he's going to free fall from pick 9 to pick 21. And I really don't see any team in between there taking that shot on him. I think that would catch me really off guard. The only 2 teams that I mentioned, Shayne, and I just can't see it still, would be the Dolphins for the world's most expensive Tua Tagovailoa insurance policy if he gets another concussion.
Yeah.
Or the Colts, which seems like a very anti-Chris Ballard move because he so much values athletic traits and size when it comes to these draft
Just look at his quarterback.
Look at his quarterback.
Even his backup quarterback, you could argue too. Honestly,
yeah, it's true. Now. It's true. And they paid Daniel Jones. And so, I don't think it's going to happen. I do think that if you are holding your breath for Shedeur, like if you are a Shedeur fan and you want him to fall to the Steelers, as long as he gets past New Orleans,
he might.
I think it sounds like there's a good chance he will.
Yeah.
I think he's going to slide all the way down to pick 21 unless another team jumps up. And I think that's unlikely. So that's where we are right now. So just to rehash the rest of Dane's mock here for the Steelers, he had Shedeur going pick 21 to Pittsburgh. And then the Steelers obviously don't have a 2nd round pick because of the DK Metcalf trade at pick 83 in the 3rd round. He has them taking Dylan Sampson, the Tennessee running back. In the 4th round, Jordan Phillips, the 20-year-old Maryland defensive tackle. In the 5th round, Elijah Roberts, the edge kind of slash hybrid, can kick inside a little bit. Athletic guy. 6th round, pick 185. Chimere Dike, the wide receiver from Florida, pretty good athlete. And then a family tie here in the 7th round, Carson Bruner, the linebacker out of Washington, hard hitter. You got to at least throw one of those nepotism picks in there.
If it's an option, which it tends to be because we see that a lot, it's very possible. So.
We didn't see Dino in there, so we can be happy about it.
He'll be in Latrobe. Don't worry.
He's going to be in camp. He's going to be in camp, but
for sure.
So no, I mean, if the draft plays out like this, Shayne, how would you feel about it? Because I really like it for the most part. I know that some people will be pretty upset with that first pick. I think they nailed the rest of the draft in terms of finding where the value lines up with the need, considering you don't have that 2nd rounder.
Yeah, I don't think it's an overall bad draft at all. I think it's fine. I think the only thing is for me, like, I'm not the hugest Dylan Sampson guy. I do worry a little bit about running backs in the Tennessee system. Now, I think that he did show more than even a guy like
Jalen Wright last year.
Last year, Jalen Wright for the Dolphins. Yeah, like I think he's got a little bit more to him than he did. Phillips is a really good nose tackle type of option. I think he's very solidly built. He's young still. I think he can add some more to his game. Elijah Roberts, I do think is a really fun fit. I think he does I think he's kind of maybe what you hoped DeMarvin Leal was going to be. Like I think he has that skill set where that might actually work, though, if that makes sense. Could just be a hard edge setter too that we could use, honestly, to give TJ a break a little bit more, since Herbig is more of that like true pass rusher backup. Like out of Florida is a good player. I think that he would be good depth. And then Bruner, again, like if you can take a connection to the Steelers, you should probably take one in the mock just to be safe. But overall, again, Sanders at 21, like I'm not the biggest fan of him. I've comped him to Teddy Bridgewater. I think your co-host on the Stacking the Box show that you do now also kind of comped him, Marcus Mosher there. So I think with Teddy Bridgewater being the comp, I'm okay with that prospect going late in the first or middle of the first, but it's still like, what is the upside there? Ultimately, I think that's the biggest problem. And I've talked to people about Shedeur going to the Steelers, and they're like, "Oh, wouldn't you love that?" I'm like, "Not really." I mean, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, it's not that he isn't necessarily worth the 21st pick, especially because he's a quarterback, but like, I don't know if I trust the Steelers to maximize him at all. I don't know, because you have to maximize the skill set to get him even like a top half of the league, potentially quarterback. I don't know if we're the team to do that.
Yeah, I get it. The conversation from both sides here, and where I land on Shedeur is pick 21 to me is the right gamble. I don't have to move up for him. It's just totally the 21st overall. It's still a first rounder. Don't get me wrong. And we just saw a first rounder bust not even 3 years ago with Kenny Pickett.
He's a better player than him. So I think
he is undoubtedly a better player than him, and it will work out better than Pickett. Like there's these guys to me aren't quite comparable as prospects. I have a tier difference between them coming out of school.
Yeah.
But I do worry, and I can't complain about the Bridgewater comp. Like he's in that wheelhouse somewhere. And so is he going to be a guy that becomes a mid-level starter in the NFL? And is that enough? Like if he's Andy Dalton, if he's somebody in that mold right there, like, is that enough? Do you have the traits and tools? Do you have the arm to cut through the wind, snow, and ice in December, January football in the North, where you're going to be playing in the elements there? So I do think where he would be best is on a team like the Saints, isn't a dome team or a team that plays a lot of warm weather games. So I do question the fit there. And obviously played at Colorado. They played in some cold elements up there, but the NFL is a different animal here. And these guys are fast. They're athletic. The guys on the opposing side of the ball, and you've got to be able to drive the ball at times. And so I think that's where he's lacking for me, is just the traits are very baseline. I think he's got a great overall demeanor and toughness and accuracy, all the things that have the makeup to be a good quarterback in the NFL. But is that what he's going to be? Is he going to be good, or can he be great? And that's what I would question. But I do think pick 21 for me is where the gamble starts being worth it, because I can say, if I need to turn around 2 years from now and say, this isn't working out, we're coming up on a class now.
We just did it.
Solid quarterback class. And you might have to do it again. And that's the unfortunate nature of the business. Like a lot of times you have to just keep swinging until you can swing past the fences here. And so that's where the Steelers might be. And you get an argument here, Shayne, to say, well, if you are going to swing that big, this maybe is not the guy to swing on. Maybe you should swing on a Jalen Milroe or somebody else that has elite traits.
And I think that's a fair argument. Yeah, I think it's a fair thing to say. Like, if you told me, like, hey, do you think the chance that Shedeur Sanders is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL at some point is better than Jalen Milroe's? I would say technically no, it's not. Like his chance of being a top 10 quarterback in terms of Shedeur Sanders is probably like less than 1%, because again, the traits that you need to be one of those guys, he just doesn't really possess them. I don't think he has the special like accuracy, pocket movement ability that like a Joe Burrow has, who has still a little bit better traits than him, especially athletically, but is also not the most like power thrower of all time, anything like that. But he has special abilities that give him the ability to be a top 5 quarterback. I don't think Sanders does. Milroe, at least in the absolute wildest of outcomes, could be a like rocket armed, souped up Jalen Hurts, who would be a firmly top 10 quarterback if he isn't already one, right? Like that's why taking a swing on a guy like that, while it has much more potential to blow up in your face, at least the potential outcome of it could get you to a point where, hey, this guy could win us a Super Bowl. Like, he could be a big part of why we make a playoff run versus just kind of being along for the ride potentially.
Yeah, and I get the appeal there as well. I think he's so far away.
That's the problem. Again,
so
you're right. I'm not thinking. I don't think he's going to get there, but he at least could. Right? There's that element.
And for what it's worth, Shayne, I did hear that the Steelers might be split on those two quarterbacks in particular, where Tomlin might be leaning more Shedeur Sanders and the rest of the coaching staff. And the scouts might be leaning more Jalen Milroe. And so we'll see who gets to make the final say there if they do decide on a quarterback. But we'll break down the rest of the options in the first round here in just a little bit. Let's throw up a question here before we get to Aaron Rodgers. From R. Barley. Hey, guys, do you think the franchise is in trouble because of everything is outdated, an outdated scheme, field, facilities, philosophy, approach? Everything here is just outdated. You're not wrong for the most part. Like they do operate like in the past with a lot of things that they do, including like we're going to do this ground and pound football and limit risk and play great defense. Like some of the things that they do is outdated. Now, I don't know how much the facility matters. I think it matters a little bit in terms of making your players satisfied. There's something to that, even like just the appeal to bring in undrafted free agents, that kind of stuff. If they have their choice, maybe they would go elsewhere. We know they don't often pay a lot of guaranteed money out to UDFAs after the draft, so they can. So some of these approaches absolutely need to be changed. And we've talked about the philosophy for years now, Shayne, like how much this philosophy needs to change and be a little bit more forward thinking instead of always just trying to keep your head above water and trying to not blow that losing record streak. Like it at some point you need to reset instead of just retool.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good question because the answer is ultimately yes. I think that that's a big part of why they haven't been able to dig themselves out of this really weird lull of like, we're always hanging around, but we're really never a threat. Like this team hasn't been a threat, in my opinion, to win anything of note since 2016. Like even some of the teams that had more firepower to them or had better overall rosters, like we were never really a threat to the rest of the league, in my opinion. And that is partially because the way that they kind of do business does limit them in a lot of ways. Like even from a cap perspective and from a like how they approach free agency and the draft, like I think Omar Khan is generally doing a good job, and I think he's much closer to like the modern GM style than we had with Colbert. But the willingness to spend money on facilities, like you talked about, trying to sign contracts that allow you to have more future flexibility, willing to shell out money for, like you said, undrafted free agents, pay for premium talent, this and that. This is a team that just doesn't really do those things generally, and it does limit your ceiling. Like there's a reason why the Eagles were able to overcome the Chiefs finally and take them out, is because their owner said, whatever is required to do so, the answer is yes. He told Howie Roseman, here's a blank check. I'm going to sell shares of the team to have extra capital. We're going to shove this money into 2030 when the cap is $400 million or whatever it's going to be in 2030. Yeah. And we're going to go for it. And guess what? They won. And they might do it again. Like that's how you win in the NFL nowadays. And I think the Steelers are very far from that. It doesn't mean they can't get their own window open or they can't make it work, but they are limiting themselves by approaching it that way.
Yeah, 100%. And the hope here is that with the new front office that we've only had for a couple of years now, that they will adapt some of these new lines of logic here when it comes to roster building and what should be prioritized in this franchise, because it is more than just trying to be a somewhat competitive team right now. Like everybody's sick of the winless drought in the playoffs, 8 years of that. Obviously, we want to see that change. All right, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers here for a minute, Shayne. Yeah. Just real briefly. There's been no updates on Rodgers other than Ryan Clark came out and said he believes that the Aaron Rodgers is holding the Steelers hostage. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is one of those situations? I know Rodgers, he kind of seems like he holds all the cards right now. Like he can decide, he can wait and see what happens with Pittsburgh in the draft next week and say, all right, you guys drafted a quarterback round 1, I'm out. Or he could say, oh, look at that. You got me a running back or a wide receiver now I'm intrigued. Like, I don't like that he has this much leverage. Do you think that the Steelers are going to give him a deadline before the draft, or you think that they're just going to do their own thing, and if Rodgers decides to come, he comes?
I think this is a really fun question, and I think fun thing to talk about, because I've heard from a lot of people, the Steelers, they need to give him a deadline, or he's, like you said, holding hostage is the conversation from Ryan Clark. If I'm being honest with you, I don't think they care at all about any of it. I think that they're going to do what they're going to do in the draft, and if he doesn't like it, then he can kick rocks. Like, I really think that's kind of the opinion, because I don't really know if it matters. Like, if he signs tomorrow, are they going to all of a sudden not like the quarterbacks if they like him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they going to say, oh no, don't worry, Aaron, we'll sacrifice our next 10 years potentially to make you happy? I don't think they're going to do that. I just don't. I don't think Omar Khan is that type of GM. I don't think as much as Mike Tomlin is a player's coach, there's a level to that where it's like, I'm not going to draft guys because you tell me to. I don't think Mike Tomlin rolls that way, for better or for worse, right? So I think this all really kind of, it's a talking point for a reason, but they're going to do what they're going to do in the draft. And if Aaron Rodgers loves it, he'll sign with the team. And if he doesn't like it, he won't. And then they'll go from there. I really think that's what it comes down to at this point.
Yeah, I would certainly hope that they're not basing everything off of the hope that Aaron Rodgers will come to Pittsburgh. And you obviously, if they are going to draft a quarterback, and they will draft one at some point in this draft, could be early, could be third, fourth round, but you hope they get the talent evaluation right here. They can't afford to keep messing this up, because every time you do, it sets them back again. If they get that right, and if they feel really confident about a guy, Rodgers is not going to influence what decisions they make in the draft. Although, Shayne, they have to, in the back of their minds, they have to be thinking, we've got the worst QB room in the league right now. Like, are they that oblivious that you've got Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson? It's the worst in the league. So it's going to get better. I mean, they're going to add somebody to that room, whether it's early, whether it's Rodgers. I would hate to think that maybe they try to trade for Kirk Cousins or something wild like that, who just doesn't have anything left, but they're going to add to the room for sure. But they have to know in the back of their minds that it is a pressing need. And I wonder if they would potentially overdraft somebody to fill a need. And this is not out of character for this team. We've seen him do it in 2021 with Najee. We saw him do it in 2022 with Kenny Pickett. We saw him trade up for Devin. But they spent a first, second, and a future third to trade from 20 to 10 to get an off-ball linebacker, Devin Bush. Terrell Edmonds in 2018. This team cares so much about filling holes. And again, new front office, new regime over the past 2 years, but it's a pretty small sample size overall. They still did pick Broderick. They traded up 3 spots for Broderick when they had a huge left tackle need, with only Dan Moore and Okorafor about to be on a contract year. So they still do draft for need. I'd like to think that if they at least value where the talent lines up with the need more so than they used to in years past. But that could potentially be an issue. But overall, I agree. They're not going to let Rodgers sway them from taking who they believe is going to be a franchise quarterback. Anything else you want to add there, Shayne?
Again, we also have to remember, like, I know they have the worst quarterback room in the league right now, realistically, especially when you factor in what we know is going to happen with, like, Tennessee, the Giants. Like, Russell Wilson, we know what he was about, but, like, he's still probably better than Mason Rudolph. But this is a coach who, with one of these quarterbacks on the roster, was able to win 8 games when the quarterbacks were Mason Rudolph, who was a worse version of his current self, and Duck Hodges were the primary quarterbacks for his football team. I really don't think Mike Tomlin cares. I think if you told him, hey, you're going to go into battle next year with Mason Rudolph, he'd be like, all right, cool, 9 wins, easy. We'll talk about it after the season. Like, that's what he's going to think. So I don't know if it matters to him that much. Like, it matters to him definitely less than it matters to us. Let me put it that way. That's for sure what's the case. So we'll see.
We will find out. All right, Shayne, let's move on. And I want to throw up my Steelers finalized pre-visit tracker here for those following on the video side of things on YouTube here. If you're on audio, we will be sure to talk all of this through if you can't see the graphic. But I want to share just a collection of data. And again, I didn't announce all of these pre-draft visits. They are all over social media, all over X. And so come from a variety of sources, Steelers Now, Steelers Depot, beat reporters, Mike DeFabo. dropped a lot of these. And so I took all these into collection, put it into a spreadsheet here. And basically it kind of gives an outline of which players the Steelers could target in the first round, second round, third, fourth. And obviously they don't have a second round pick. I made that clear in the graphic here, as you can see. But let's talk about these first round picks, and we'll kind of go down the list here, Shayne. So what I did is I checked boxes. I gave you a double X for the pro day. I gave you a double X for the 30 visit. What we found last year, if you look at, and again, small sample with Omar Khan and Andy Weidel running the front office, but last year, the 30 visits mattered much more than even the pro day dinner meetings did. Mm-hmm. So of the 30 visits, I've got that graphic right here as well on my side of things. Troy Fautanu, no pro day meeting at all, no combine meeting, but had the 30 visit. Zach Frazier, no Big 12 pro day, not with Pittsburgh's brass, at least, is what I'm talking about here. No combine visit, but had the 30 visit. Peyton Wilson, same thing. Mason McCormick, same thing. They drafted 4 of those guys. 4 of the guys in the first 5 picks were guys who had the pre-draft visit with the Steelers. So it matters. So this year I decided to do the double check mark for the pre-draft visitors list. And Shayne, what we find is when you check all these boxes, and only one check for the combine box, by the way, because that one is the least meaningful, and it doesn't hold a lot of weight there. But what we find is if we stack this board, TreVeyon Henderson is the top name on the list if you consider him a first-round candidate. I'd love to consider him a second-round candidate, slide him over. But he checks those boxes to be in contention there. And the over-under of 21.5, which can change, would suggest that he is in contention to be the first overall pick of the Steelers.
Yeah, and that's looking at this, like that's the most jarring part about this is there's a lot of guys on this list that like, yeah, this makes sense for them. And then there's a couple of guys where I'm like, I just don't see it, frankly. Mm-hmm. Like Henderson being the 21st pick is just too rich for me. He's 44 on my board, really good player still. He's not a first-round running back, in my opinion. I don't think he's ever going to be the guy who carries the load. I think you have to be a true, like, 3-down capable running back. Because even like a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, he wasn't used that way so far with the Lions. But when he's had to carry the load, he's shown the ability to do so, even at his size. I think Henderson might struggle to do that if he had to do that. Now, he wouldn't in Pittsburgh, at least his first year with Jaylen Warren being there too. But then why are you spending a first-round pick on him? So that's ultimately, I think, the case with him, at least.
Yeah, so going down the other names from top of the list as potentially most likely candidates. And again, I sorted this by overall check marks here that they obtained through the pre-draft interest tracker, more so than who I necessarily think. I can give you my thoughts on what I think, but we also we'll save some of that for next week's show as well when we do our 7-round mock. The next on the list is Shedeur Sanders. And so this time I valued, if you had the same amount of check marks here, I valued the guys who got the 30 visit this year over the pro day dinner meeting, because last year it was so much more predictive that the visit mattered more than the pro day dinner meeting. We'll see if that holds true again this year, but that's how I sorted it. So going down the list from TreVeyon Henderson, the next names on the list: quarterback Shedeur Sanders, Oregon defensive lineman Derek Harmon.
We love that.
Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden, who could very well be gone before
I think he will
be looking that way. Yeah. Running back Omarion Hampton, who I believe his over-under is right around 20. We're Steelers picking 21. Jackson Dart, who I heard the Steelers were not very high on after the visit, so we'll see if that holds true. But he does check that box there. Yeah. Those are the guys based on this that would have the most. And then you talk about Emeka Egbuka got the pro day dinner meeting and a combine visit. Jahdae Barron pro day dinner meeting and a combine visit. I don't hold that with a ton of weight, but take it for what it is. And some of that has to do with scheduling too. Like we know there were certain pro days they weren't able to attend. Going further down the list, safety Nick Emenwari of South Carolina, the uber athlete. I don't know how I feel about his film in general. I think the film's okay. I think he's got some potential there. Shamar Stewart, same way, 10 on the Ross scale. Both of those guys broke the Ross scale, relative athletic score, essentially. Trey Amos, just under that. all in contention here. And again, I view Amos as a late first, early second round type of player,
Yeah.
but we can't rule out the possibility of him being that pick. Now, the next two names, Shayne, I've got, and then I'll take a breather here and let you talk. Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson, both from Michigan. And we did learn that the Steelers, it sounds like it was their brass, Tomlin and Kahn, who did have a dinner meeting and were at Michigan before the pro day. However, they had to leave because Aaron Rodgers came to town, all of a sudden decided to come to town, and they had to go and meet with him. And so I put an asterisk next to those two names there because I don't think we can rule them out yet. If this hadn't happened and neither one of these guys get a 30 visit and Tomlin and Kahn aren't there at the combine, I would say, yeah, you can rule them out as being a potential first-round pick. But I have an asterisk there because there was a scheduling conflict here. So what do you make of those two guys? What do you think their chances are being kind of in this uncharted territory and some of the other names that we mentioned here as well?
So I think Will Johnson is going to be gone by 21 regardless. So I'm not super concerned about his situation. Kenneth Grant's the one that's interesting because I could see, for the same reason that the running backs might not go as high as maybe their talent suggests in this class, defensive line is very, very deep. And I could see a Kenneth Grant or a Derek Harmon that's higher up on the board for the Steelers. Other guys fall a little bit because teams might just say, well, we really like these guys, but I like the guy I can get in the second round a lot. I like the guy I can get on day 3 a lot. And, maybe it's not our biggest need. Like that could push him into the Steelers range. And I think because they showed interest in the Michigan guys before they had to bounce to go talk to Aaron Rodgers, which again, like, whatever. I do think that it's not impossible that they would be the pick. And maybe they also think that Kenneth Grant might not be there either, right? Like maybe that's kind of what their intel is telling them. So I think sometimes you have to factor that in of like, they might like a player a lot, but they might also think, well, we're not going to have a chance to draft him. So let's not put too much resources into it, but we're ready in case he does get there.
Yeah, and I think that you always have to do your homework, especially with these first-round prospects. You don't want to miss with your top pick. Shayne, I will say it's worth noting that Dane Brugler had Will Johnson going 23 to the Packers. So he does think that there's a chance that Johnson can fall to that pick. I know I think that the premium on the cornerback position should have him going higher than that, but there's always a chance that can happen. And so I'll keep an eye on that. If this plays out in a way where we're going to have to kind of rethink some of the things that we know about the Steelers draft history here, because they didn't necessarily need to see them participate at the pro day in order to draft those guys if it plays out that way. Right. Moving down the list here to the final first round candidates, we'll call them. Quarterback Jalen Milroe of Alabama got the pro day dinner meeting, but did not get a combine meeting, did not get a 30 visit. Same with Michael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia, and Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. I think that you can basically cross Campbell off, but I had to put him on the tracker just because he does at least check the pro day dinner box there. And then we're talking the last 5 guys on the list here, very unlikely to end up being the selection here. Tyler Booker, the Steelers were at Alabama's pro day, so it checks a box there. No dinner meeting reported. Same with Jalen Walker, the edge rusher from Georgia, Ashton Genty, who's going to be gone, Tyler Warren, who's going to be gone. Both got combine meetings. And then what's the last one there? I can't see that one.
I actually, unfortunately, with my name, I can't.
So, and then Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel also checked a formal combine meeting box, but very, very unlikely selection. What you'll notice here, Shayne, is the guys that are missing. Some of the names that are missing, based on history and what we know about this team, you can cross them off as candidates. I'm going to do a study on this, and I'm going to have an article coming out. But the Steelers will not draft Luther Burden. They will not draft Walter Nolan based on what we know. They would have to break historic trends under Mike Tomlin, dating all the way back to the beginning of Mike Tomlin's tenure, in order to draft one of those guys, now that they didn't check any of these boxes. So now the one I would almost put an asterisk next to Walter Nolan, because Andy Weidel was there at Ole Miss's pro day. But I don't know if that's enough. If your two top head honchos aren't there, I don't know if it's enough, even if with as much say as Weidl has in the draft process. So those are my overall thoughts there. Anything that pops out to you, Shayne?
I will say with the guys that are in that like bottom half of the first round list, the Jalen Milroe, Williams, Campbell, those guys, there is a common theme with those players that I think is worth noting in terms of why maybe they weren't on the 30 visit list, besides the fact that you only have so many and you don't want to use them all on first round options. So because you want to talk to some later round guys too. All of them, especially with Williams, I don't know as much about this necessarily, but all of them unbelievably high character players according to their coaching staff, to players that played with them. Like people love Jalen Milroe. Let's routinely talk about him as one of the best like combine interviews that was going on at that point. John Campbell's is also gotten talked like that. Tyler Booker, the way that they rave about him at Alabama, I mean, you think he was like one of the best players to ever come through there, right? Like that's how people talk about him. And the same thing with Jalen Walker. Like one of the reasons why people are so high on him, I still struggle to get there with him as like a top 10 pick, but it's because of the way he understands the game, the way he talks, the way he operates as a player. Like all these are guys that realistically, if they're there, I don't know if the Steelers need to have visited with them to feel comfortable about it. So just something to throw out there. Not saying any of them are going to be the pick, but I think that could be a reason why you didn't see them be like 30 visits and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. All stand-up character guys, universally known that way. And so maybe that's part of the case. Maybe it's also because it doesn't line up with their biggest needs. And so they didn't decide to do as much homework there. But those are basically your first-round prospects. I mean, you're looking at those guys at the top of the list. I would kind of be surprised if it wasn't one of those first 6 names there, first 5 names there: Travion Henderson, Shedeur Sanders, Derek Harmon, Matthew Golden, Omarion Hampton. Like that seems to be the crop, that group right there that they're looking at. And then you go down a few picks after that: Nick Emanwari, Shamar Stewart. Can't rule those guys out either. It's kind of like a wild card pick maybe if things go awry early in the draft and those are left with the options that they have there. From what I'm hearing, Emanwari is going to be gone inside the top 14 picks of the draft. We'll see if that plays out. I know teams, they value those athletic traits.
I mean, I can see it, but that's just, it's a lot for me. But
I get it. I'm not going to have him. That'll be a reach pick for me for sure if that ends up playing out like that.
I think he was 48 on my board right now. I think.
And I get it because when I watch Emanwari's film too, I don't see a guy that pops out necessarily. I see a solid football player, but I would let somebody else take that gamble instead of the Steelers there. Let's talk about second round prospects briefly, considering the Steelers don't have a second round pick this year, but it's not to say that they can't acquire one, right? Like they can move back in the draft. We know this team only has 6 selections, only 2 inside the top 120. So my money, Shayne, is on Omar Khan trying to move back either a little bit from 21 or depending on who's there. Like if they're not trading back from a quarterback that they really like or something that way, or back from 83 and try to pick up at least a little bit more capital here. Obviously, if you're trading back from 83, they're not getting a second rounder. But in the rare event that they do find a way to pick up a second round pick here, and I really hope it doesn't come from trading next year's draft capital away. Let's not do that. But if they find a way to pick up a second round pick, these are the top prospects that they could be targeting. Caleb Johnson got a 30 visit. Quinshon Judkins did not, but he was a pro day dinner meeting and a combine visit. Darius Alexander, which I am really hoping this is not a first round contention player.
Yeah, I mean, I like Darius.
25-year-old from a small school. Like it's just too rich for me, especially when you don't have elite production there either. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Milroe, again, I forgot to cross him off. These should just be on the first round one based on his over-under and the fact that he got the invite to the NFL draft. Like he might slide to the very early second, but not in a position where Steelers would draft him unless they traded with the Browns or Giants or something wild like that. And then JT Tuamaleolo, Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle from Ohio State, Donovan Jackson. Those guys each, Tomlin and Khan were there at their pro days, didn't get the dinner meeting that was reported. And then just Jack Besh, Xavier Watts, Benjamin Morrison got formal combine meetings. So very, very little chance based on the draft picks the Steelers have that they draft any of these guys.
Yeah, I doubt it. Like even guys like, I think Donovan Jackson could be a first round pick. Like I think that's
Could be, yeah,
possible.
he could.
I don't know if I necessarily love that, but I do think that that's possible. I hear a lot of people could be like that could like him enough to do that. But yeah, most of these guys are going to fall in between the two picks for sure. You know, I doubt most of these guys are even in contention at 83, like to get there. But if they did, you know, it's good to know that where they're at with them. And we have some other guys in that second, third round tier. But I think generally speaking, like if they don't trade down, then like you said, none of these guys are probably in the cards for them.
Yep, I would agree. It's just not going to line up, and the Steelers won't have a shot at them in round 3 at pick 83. So let's move over to the second, third round candidates, closer to third rounders over here. This is where it gets interesting because the Steelers use so many visits on running backs in like the third, fourth, fifth round range.
Yeah.
They're going to take one there if they don't get one at 21. And I really hope they don't get one at 21 because this is a good running back class.
Yeah.
And that's where the value lies, is taking them there. If you're not getting Genty, take one in somewhere between rounds 3 and 5. You're going to get a really good football player still. DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, both had 30 visits and formal combine meetings. They're very much in contention at pick 83. And we just talked about how Dane Brugler had Dylan Sampson going to the Steelers at pick 83. Yep. That checks out. Elijah Roberts, also in contention here, maybe closer to like a 4th round guy, but the athletic traits could bump him up with his versatility there as well. Vernon Broughton interestingly got a pro day dinner meeting with the Steelers. Big, long defensive lineman. Doesn't surprise me. You're talking to 6'5", 311, long arms. He fits the mold of what they like there a lot. So if they do miss out on defensive line early in the draft, look at Broughton like in that third-ish round range right there. I'm not sure if you can wait any longer on him, maybe just a round later than that. We got a quarterback sneaking in here, Tyler Shuck. Gets the 30 visits, although he could be gone by this time as well. He could be one of those guys that goes very early second round, just based on the traits there. Joshua Farmer, Jalen Knoll, and Azariah Thomas each got 30 visits as well. So they're in contention. And then I just threw in a bunch of names here, Shayne, that we can't rule out entirely, being that there was some form of connection here. Jack Sawyer, the Steelers were at his Ohio State Pro Day. And then the next 5 names on the list, Alfred Collins, Trey Harris, Tate Ratledge, Xavier Restrepo, Shamar Turner, each were formal combine visits. I put an asterisk next to Josiah Stewart because Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan were not available at the Michigan Pro Day because of the Aaron Rodgers meeting.
Yeah, I think all these guys, again, they're certainly in contention, especially that top half of the row, right? Like I think from Azariah Thomas up are all potential candidates. Now, I think some of these guys, especially, are going to be gone. Like I think Knoll not going to be there personally. I don't think he makes it there. Thomas could, because he does have some speed concerns with his 40. Is he going to be able to play press man at the next level without getting burnt? You know, is that going to be an issue? But most of the rest of these guys certainly could be there at 83. I think Josiah Stewart's an interesting one because I'm very, very high on him compared to consensus, I think. And part of it is because he gives me major Nick Herbig vibes. Like, so much so that I'm like, I have to have this guy on my top 10 edges. I don't care. I don't care about any of the measurables. I have to do it. So that would be awesome to have 2 of him, but I don't think he's probably going to be in contention for this pick either. So.
All right, Shayne, and let's just briefly talk about the 3rd through 5th round candidates here. The Steelers, for whatever reason, they seem to love Ollie Gordon. I've had him right at the top of the list here. So he checks the box with a 30 visit, formal combine meeting. Same with Savion Williams, Jaden Blue, JJ Pigways. And those guys all are very much in contention, I would say, like the 4th-ish round there if they're still on the board.
For sure.
And then we look at Quinn Ewers and Will Howard, the 2 polarizing quarterbacks here that both got pro day dinner meetings with Steelers brass and formal combine meetings. And then a couple more running backs, Bashal Tutin, RJ Harvey got 30 visits. Kyle McCord got a 30 visit, the quarterback from Syracuse. Jamari Caldwell, the defensive tackle from Oregon, got a 30 visit. So I would say those are the guys you're looking at most likely picks. And then a collection of others just down the list who at least checked some form of either the pro day visit box or the combine visit.
Yeah, there's some names in here that I certainly am interested in.
Yeah.
First of all, the running backs pretty much across the board except for Ollie Gordon, because again, I don't really know at this point. Like if you just watch 2023, everybody be like, yeah, that's awesome. What do you mean? 2024 is rough. I'm not gonna lie. I know the team was bad. I know that he was struggling with stuff. He just doesn't have the burst, I think, to be a feature back. So I just wouldn't do that. Savion Williams, I think they like because they like Cordell Patterson, and they're like, well, hey, Arthur, listen, if we can't have Cordell Patterson because he's old, what if we just got him as a prospect? Would that make you happy? So that could be a fit for sure. The quarterbacks, I like Kyle McCord a lot, actually, so I'm good with that one. The rest could take it or leave it. And then Jamari Caldwell is a guy, too, where I'm like, if we can't get a defensive lineman in the first round because we're focusing on something else, give me that guy in the middle of the defense. I am more than happy to do that. So,
yeah, definitely some intriguing names there. And if the Steelers are able to wait this long in the draft to get that running back, and you can get a explosive athlete like Bashal too, and like sign me up for that. Like that's what they're missing, is that type of big play ability. RJ Harvey, I like there as well. When we're talking about that range and we don't have to spend an elite pick on a running back and we're still getting a guy with explosive playability, like I'm all for that. And then R. Barley chimes in here with a comment on Savion Williams. Savion Williams is an NFL H-back. Mark my words. I said the same thing about Cordell Patterson years ago. And guess who else believed that? R.D. Smith. So, yeah, I mean, there's potential for him to kind of transition into that role.
I really think that's how you use him. It's just play him across the formation. Like
he's not that natural receiver, and he doesn't have great hands, but that's what happened to Cordell Patterson. And I think if the NFL was a little bit wiser, they would have moved him to running back years earlier in his career, and he would have been.
It's harder when it's a first round pick who like is a receiver. You want him to work out as a receiver, but with Savion Williams, like we've seen, it's proof of concept. Like if you're a big, long, athletic, just monster of a runner with the ball, maybe you don't have to play really running back truly, but you can do running back stuff, and we can get you the ball in creative ways. Like that's how he should be used for sure.
Yeah, he's truly a gadget. So if you can find a way to use him that way, or if you think that you can transition him into a running back, there's a lot that goes into that. We don't know what his vision would be like as a full-time player there.
Like, he looked pretty good in the carries he had. Yeah, I thought he did a good job. But it's a project.
He's got a really intriguing skill set too. When you run 4.4 and you are 6'3", almost 6'4", and 222 pounds, like you are an intriguing prospect for sure. All right, Shayne, let's go over to do our live mock draft. And as you're getting that set up for us, if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. We love bringing you this coverage, and absolutely make sure you're back here for next week's show, as we're going to have a NFL draft roundtable, and Shayne and I will give our predictive mock drafts. We're going to try to predict what the Steelers will do next week at this time. All right, Shayne, let's kick it off here. And before we get to next week's, obviously, we're going to try to do a predictive mock based on the simulator here today. Yeah. So if you're following us on the live stream, you can see the mock draft here in the background. Audio listeners, we will try to make sure that we tell you what's going on and who's available at each spot for the Steelers. So go ahead and kick it off, Shayne.
Yep. So, we'll get started here using PFF's mock draft simulator. It can be a little bit wonky, so just remember that, but we will do our best to do as predictive as possible. So let's get to the Steelers' first pick here. So, all right, so let's take a quick look at who's kind of come off the board. Okay. So we did have Shedeur Sanders go at 3 to the Giants in this situation. So they still seem to think that's possible. Abdul Carter falls to 6 to the Raiders. Yeah, some funky stuff. I'm not gonna lie, like that'll happen. Panthers taking Ashton Genty. That'll happen sometimes with this. But looking at the board right now, so Mika Ibuka went right before him. Michael Williams was somebody who was at least had a minor interest from the Steelers. Looking at the board as it is, Tommy, I think obviously with Shedeur off the board, so this is a situation we'll just assume that he's off the board in some form or fashion, right? It doesn't really matter why, because it went at 3, probably not going to happen, but it is what it is. I think a player that should still be on the board that obviously has a lot of interest from them is Derek Harmon is one of those options for sure. If we want to look at receiver, Matthew Golden has gone off the board, so he's not in contention. And so honestly, I think as far as guys that were like major considerations, Travion Henderson and Derek Harmon are the two that were the highest on yours, or Aaron Hampton too. like on your list of guys that make the most sense. It's true. That's what we got right now. So I think, though, given the list of guys who have gone off the board, I would assume it would be Derek Harmon here at 21.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. And Shayne, if you would just scroll back up for me, because I want to see some of the names up top here. Again, we talked about how Walter Nolan will not be in contention, and unless the Steelers are willing to break every historical trend imaginable, he's not going to be that guy. So if you're a big Walter Nolan fan, and I do think his film is really good, not going to be there. And there is some character stuff with him as well. And perhaps that's the reason why they weren't as interested there.
Maybe.
Again, gets a half of an asterisk there because Andy Weidel was at the pro day, but I don't think it's enough. Until proven otherwise, I don't think the assistant GM being there is going to be enough. Otherwise, I would say that would be in contention. Now, you say Derek Harmon, and I do think that's the prize. I really do, Shayne. I think it's the prize for the Steelers. But I know how much the Bengals like this guy. Like, I'm just going to be so surprised if they take. They won't take Luther Burden. Didn't check that box either. And then Kenneth Grant is like right on the fence there. I do think that they could still get behind that. But it makes you wonder, like, why did you use 9 pre-draft visits on running backs and you didn't bring in Kenneth Grant, who could very well be there for your pick and comes at a huge position of need, could be here for a long time. Like, all those questions are worth asking for a player like that. So I do agree. If the draft plays out where Harmon is on the board at pick 21, I think that they run their card in for him. I'm not even sure if they risk a trade back at that point, because I think that you could almost make a case that Harmon is the ultimate prize. Like, he fits the size profile. Comes out of position with immense career longevity. Obviously, we know like Stephon Tuitt retired very early for different reasons. Cam Hayward's still going strong at 36 years old. Like, they want to find that guy. They know that they need another one. So I agree, Shayne. I think that is a pick. Let me ask you, do you think that Harmon is available for the Steelers?
I don't think so either, unfortunately. The consensus on him is lower than where we're picking at, but like we've talked about that the Bengals seem to have interest in him from everything we've seen. There's teams that need this position ahead of us that it just takes one team to say. I know it was his first year playing as a true like 5-3 technique type of player after being more of a nose in Michigan State. But the production was too good. The film's too good. We're taking him in the top half of the draft. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. So I think we could take him here on the off chance that he does get here, because you never know with this draft. Like, after the top 8 or 10 guys, like, it feels like anyone could go from that point on. So, or we could entertain a trade down situation, especially with Shedeur off the board. Maybe if they did want to take a quarterback here, maybe they don't like Milroe enough to do it, but they are willing to move down. A team could be willing to come up here to nab one of these guys that are still on the board. That's something we could entertain too, but otherwise I think it would be Derek Harmon.
I agree, Shayne. And I don't want to say that it's set in stone, but I've just heard so many things about the Bengals specifically, their interest in Harmon and how they won't let him get past pick 17. But if he does, I mean, I think that they would run that card in. Now, the question is, like, if Harmon was there, if Harmon wasn't there, let's say he wasn't there for a second, would the Steelers take a running back at pick 21 because of knowing their interest in that position? Or do you think we're entering like trade back territory now? It's like, yeah, we got a couple running backs on the board. We like both Henderson and Omari and Hampton. We're going to try to move back a few spots if we can. Like, this is, I mean, if Harmon isn't here and if they're not willing to take Grant or Burden, who I also like, this is kind of like the nightmare scenario for me if the draft unfolded like this.
I think so too, to a certain degree. I think given the board right now, if we were to assume Derek Harmon probably shouldn't be on the board at this point, trading down would probably be the best option, because if they like a running back enough to take him here, I think Omar Khan is smart enough to be like, let me try to get some value before I do that. If I am going to really settle on a running back here, let me try to get some value on it first and hope that no one else takes one from wherever I move down to. Like, that probably would be the smartest way to go about it in this situation.
Okay. And so with that thought, Shayne, do you think that, because we're trying to do this as predictive as possible, would you be more okay with taking Harmon in the chance that he falls to the Steelers here because we know the Steelers like him? Or do you think it's more likely that he doesn't get there and the Steelers operate maybe a little bit of a trade back in this situation?
I think because of the fact that we can't say for sure that the Bengals are going to ultimately take Harmon.
Mhm.
We just know that he is on their radar for sure in a heavy way. I think for the sake of what happens if he gets
Yeah.
here, we should probably take Harmon to show that like he would be the pick if he's here. And I think
Yeah.
that's very likely. And then it allows us to kind of go with the draft as how it's more likely to go, where I think it's possible they trade down, but I think with the way things are going, they're probably going to stick and pick either a quarterback if it's Sanders falling there, or one of the other players on their board if Derek Harmon and guys like that are gone. So I think we should
I
just go ahead
agree
and take
with you.
Harmon.
I agree with you. And I can't say that I agree with where he is on PFF's board either.
Yeah,
I
they're
think
not
he
as
should be
much of a
higher than
fan.
that.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore the tea leaves. Like it just makes
Mhm.
sense in the Steelers. We can connect him to the Steelers pretty easily.
Yeah.
All right, we skipped way past the second round now. We're going
Yeah.
to round 3. Shayne, you want to go and kind of name off some of the notable names that have left and then who's still available for us here?
So Jordan Phillips, the guy that we had as an option, is gone way earlier than we typically see. So he's not an option here. Joshua Farmer, someone that they showed interest in, he's not on the board anymore. You look at Dylan Sampson's gone as well. Jalen Miller went to the Browns at 67. So a lot of guys the Steelers showed interest in. Travion Henderson, Quinton Judkins go back-to-back picks here. Some other guys. Let's see if there's anybody else that stands out. Jaden Higgins goes. Restrepo at 53 is probably not going to happen anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, JT's gone. Like a lot of guys that you did have on your board as guys who were interested or that they were interested in, but just not gonna be here. So definitely some interesting names that have gone a little earlier than maybe we expected. So let's take a look. I want to start by looking at running backs here because this is a prime pick or prime spot for them to take one. And of the guys who they've shown interest in, RJ Harvey's sitting here, DJ Giddens is here, Jaden Blue is here, like all guys that they have brought in. Bashal Tootin would obviously still be here. He's much lower on their board here. So all of those guys are still options. Any other positions you want me to pull up just to see if there's anyone?
Well, let's look at quarterback real quick. I think we
Yeah.
at least have to do our homework there based on what the Steelers, the interest they've shown. I do
So
think
Will
that
Howard is here. Tyler Shuck
they don't
is
think they're
here.
get yeah. And I mean Shuck, I don't know. I just
I don't
83
know if
like
he'll
that's
be
I
there.
don't think he lasts this long.
Yeah, I
But
don't think so.
knowing how much homework they've done at this position, you can't rule it out. I think if they miss out on their version of their franchise guy in the first round, I think that they maybe wait another round here
Me
because
too,
they did meet with
think.
Kyle McCord and so let's not do that yet. I think let's look BPA real quick too, just kind of overall and kind of go down and see.
So Kevin Winston Jr. won't be here. I'll be honest with you. He's not going to be here. Just throwing that out. They didn't show interest in him anyway. As far as guys that they've shown interest in, it looks like Harvey, Noel, I don't think he'll be here either.
I don't think Noel will be there.
Yeah, Harvey is the highest of the guys they've shown significant interest in, at least on this board. Elijah Roberts is sitting here. They have Vernon Broughton could be a pick here for sure. He was someone that you mentioned that they did have some interest in. They didn't take, but we did take Derek Harmon in the first round already, so we don't probably need to double up there. Savion Williams is a little early for me on him. Probably a little bit too early too. Again, we already took Murray Caldwell's teammate and Derek Harmon. So really, I kind of think running back is the move probably.
I agree with you, Shayne. Again, we're just to be clear, we're doing this as predictive as possible. Now, I might move in a different direction with this. If these were the names on the board, there's other guys that I would strongly consider here. But we're also trying to be predictive in terms of which guys we think are going to be gone. Like I like Jalen Noel a lot. I just don't think he's going to be here.
I don't think he makes it.
He goes to the second round somewhere.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I like Kyle Williams too, but let's go up and go to running back. Then let's sort by running back because I think that based on the names available, this is most likely. Now, Shayne, go ahead and share your thoughts with the guys that you like best or at this spot and who you think the Steelers would like best, and then I'll do the same.
So I think my favorite player that's currently on the board would be Damian Martinez, actually. Not someone that they showed interest in, but I think he has the build and the requirements, like size-wise, to handle a full-time workload if he does become the feature back at some point, or if Jaylen Warren gets banged up or whatever. Doesn't have the third down ability, but you hope that Jaylen Warren is around for at least this year and maybe even into the future to handle a lot of that stuff. So he'd be a good fit. I do think Harvey makes a lot of sense too. the explosiveness, the ability to make big plays, something this offense is desperately needed. But he is an older player. He has some of that stuff going on. He might be more of a day 3 pick, truly, at the end of the day. And then I think if it's not one of those two guys, DJ Giddens makes a lot of sense too. He kind of fits the mold as a really good part of rotation as well.
Yeah, Shayne, my 2 favorite backs on the board, interestingly, are DJ Giddens and Bashal Tutin. Like,
right.
I was on the Tutin wagon long before the miraculous combine performance, but he has so much explosion.
Perfect fit for the scheme too.
I can live with the fumbles. He's a wide zone runner.
Yeah.
I can live with some of those fumbles if he's going to hit home runs for me pretty routinely. Giddens is my favorite overall player, however, and I kind of hope the Steelers see it that way. Each of these guys offers you something a little bit different. I do think that I like Harvey a lot. I do think that Harvey might be too close to the Jaylen Warren mold and also has 3 knee injuries in his history there. Martinez, you're getting back closer to like the Najee type of runner with the big frame and everything there. A little bit more explosive than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
More patient.
Sure. Martinez is a good football. He's a good football. Neal's a good football player. I mean, Neal's
they're not going to draft
surprisingly shifty for how big he is, but Neal's not going to be a guy that's on their list. They like Jaden Blue, the speed there. They had him in for a visit. But I would say, Shayne, based on if all these are the names that are available, first of all, I would question if Giddens is actually going to be on the board at pick 83. I know the Dallas Cowboys like him in the 3rd round there as well. But if he's there, I think the Steelers might take Giddens because of the blend of traits that he has there. He might be the highest overall back on their board, but what do you think about that?
I agree. I think if this is who's available at running back, which again, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, or if we're going with the idea of like, let's focus on what we know about their interests, what can we do with the pick that we're given, with the board we're given, Giddens, I think, fits the mold the most because he has more potential than a guy like Harvey because he's younger, less beat up, more of a complete back. Jaden Blue is, to me, pretty much a receiving back. Like, I don't know if he's going to offer you a ton of running ability. And then Bashal Tutin, as much as I think he's a perfect scheme fit, I think his potential to be like a true workhorse back is limited because of the fumbling, because of some of the other things where he's really mostly a wide zone player. I think Giddens fits the mold the best here, especially with 83.
Yeah, Shayne, for as much homework as they did, you hope they don't get this selection wrong here. Spent 9 pre-draft visits on running backs. So we're going with DJ Giddens at pick 83.
Right. So now that we're down here at 123, so some guys, just to throw some guys out that they showed some interest in. JJ Pegues goes to the Bengals, so that's one guy to watch out for. Caldwell also went here. Some other guys, see if anybody stands out. Savion Williams goes to the Patriots.
Okay.
Interesting where Cordero Patterson's got his start as a running back, so that's interesting. So looking at that, don't know if there's Charles Grant was low on the day 3 list, but he
potential
goes
swing
here.
tackle there. Yeah.
Tate Ratledge goes here. Broughton's off the board. Elijah Roberts off the board too. So Noel finally goes here at 86. So yeah, there's a lot of guys that they've shown interest in that are gone. But I think this, though, in terms of direction, this is where I think a quarterback pick starts to be very likely.
I agree. If the draft unfolds like this, I think this is a very likely quarterback landing spot in round 4 here. So of the names available, Shayne, first of all, let's kind of X out the ones we believe will be gone by the 4th round. Tyler Shuck's not going to be here.
No,
he just has too many tools. I think he could end up going 2nd, 3rd round. But to be there for Steelers 4th round pick, middle of the 4th round, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Any other names?
I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to be there.
I don't think Ewers will be there either. Now, Ewers, I would say Ewers would probably be my favorite. Just if I'm taking a dart throw here, based on the traits and everything. I think I like him more than you do, but I would agree that Ewers probably would not be.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this up here. There's a chat from our Barley. If you wanted to throw up, he asked about CJ West. He went a while ago, so unfortunately, he's not an option here.
Yeah,
just throwing that out there. But I think at quarterback, again, Quinn Ewers, Tyler Shuck, I don't think will be there. I think there's an outside chance that Dylan Gabriel won't be there, but he's not a fit for the Steelers anyway. Like I think some team might fall in love with just like how high floor he is, how accurate he is, the experience. I think someone could definitely fall in love with him. To me, it's Will Howard and Kyle McCord. Like those are the 2 names that I gravitate towards. And I'm a bigger fan of McCord, but I feel like the Steelers would be a bigger fan of Howard. He has a championship pedigree at Ohio State. He had a really solid playoff, like more than solid playoff run. Some of the best games of his career came in that playoff run for them. So he's coming off of that high. I do think his pre-draft process has been a little bit messy. He's not looked super good at the combine or other things, but I think he has the pedigree that they probably want. He has the size profile that they probably want. He's a good, not great athlete, but he's a good one. He can move a little bit. He would probably be my pick if I'm being predictive, although I do like, again, McCord significantly more than him.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the total arm talent there for Will Howard, but he is a winner. He comes from an Ohio State program that they love. They've met with him. They had the met with him formally at the combine. They had the pro day dinner meeting with Howard. Just checked so many of those boxes that they would look for, and a little Mason Rudolph, if I must admit. I think he's kind of right in that wheelhouse of quarterback there.
Better athlete.
So
but still,
I agree that if McCord and Howard were both on the board, I do think the Steelers take Howard over McCord would be my guess.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be the pick in the situation. So moving down to all the way down to 156 here. So looking at guys, and I wanted to pull up your list again here. I just want to have it for myself because looking at the day 3 guys, that way.
Yeah, as you're doing that, Shayne, let's talk about some of the holes still on the roster. The Steelers desperately need a swing tackle. If they're not going to get it in free agency, they'll have to get it in the draft at some point. We have not taken a corner yet. We have not taken safety depth, although I think you can get away with that either very late in the draft or not at all. And a wide receiver. I mean, they've got to take a wide receiver at some point. I would
sure. I think they could. Looking at that, so like if you're looking at day 3 guys potentially that they met with, not really anyone at receiver really sticks out, which is interesting to me, especially in that like day 3 range. You do look at guys like they did show some interest in some linebackers, some offensive linemen, but guards mostly. And center like a Jared Wilson, Tate Ratledge, Fairchild, those guys. So it's just in terms of that. Like I think the day 3 board for guys that they showed interest in is kind of wiped out at this point. So we can kind of focus on, I think, where they should be taking swings at. So receiver makes a lot of sense. I actually, weirdly enough, I don't think Tesla makes it to 156. I think a lot of teams like him.
No, the athletic profile is so intriguing there. And Dante Thornton too. I mean, I know
someone's going to take him earlier than he has to.
He's the guy that I'm going to miss on 10 times out of 10. I'm just so intrigued by that profile.
It's very interesting.
6'4.5" and run 4.30.
Yeah, it's insane.
Deep threat.
But looking at the offensive line, so Logan Brown out of Kansas could make sense as a swing tackle potentially. Jalen Travis out of Iowa State. Emory Jones Jr. to me is probably a guard. Realistically, I don't know if he really fits as a tackle. Fairchild, they did show interest in. He's still here as a guard option. Holland Pierce, all guys that kind of make sense as day 3 tackles you take a swing on. So that's what.
Yeah, and it's true that they need some guard depth as well now. All of a sudden, so they were super deep at guard before the start of last year. Then injury struck, and then they lost guys in free agency. So. I think they could go either of those directions, but you're looking secondary here too.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a look at what we have in the secondary as well. So RJ Mickens, I'm a decent fan of. I think he's definitely a really good day 3 flyer as a safety. Really good athlete, good coverage skills. Not really a run defender though, so I wonder if they would worry about that a little bit. With Malachi Moore is another name that I could see them really liking. You know, the pedigree at Alabama, played a long time, really experienced player. Like he's a fun one for sure that he could be a really good third safety for them. Other guys here, I mean, I think Denzel Burke will go earlier just off of name value alone, frankly. But there's another name I want to throw out later that, because they love their Wisconsin guys and Wooldren makes sense, but probably not at 156. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of these secondary corner. I don't really love them there, but
if I was picking here, and I know we're doing this predictive mock for those of you who are just joining us in the live chat, I'd be really intrigued by Zoff Frazier or Caleb Ransaw. Like this is the time of the draft where you want to take stabs on like uber athletic small school guys.
Sure.
But I don't know. And again, not everybody they're going to bring in is going to be a pre-draft visit guy.
No, it's not. Especially at this point.
We're getting to the point where most of their pre-draft visits have already been drafted. So I do think they can go a number of directions here. I think the safety might be a little bit overkill for this year, although they really need youth. They signed Juan Thornhill. Miles Killebrew is still the special teams captain there. Right. So they've got solid enough depth. And then if Ryan Watts can come back, he's there as well. So What are you thinking? Swing tackle here, corner? Like, do you have a preference? Where do you think they're most likely to go?
I think most likely they did sign, I think it was Calvin Anderson to like a 2-year deal, didn't they? As a tackle, like extended him or something like that. I wonder if they view him as the swing tackle, which I don't love that, but that contract indicates to me that they feel that way. So I
they may only carry 3 tackles on the roster if that's they need more competition for sure. I think
they do,
but they obviously need a corner too. I mean, they did very little to address the cornerback situation this year. I know they had 2 signings, but they have nobody kind of long term outside of that. So,
yeah, I mean, I kind of think I like your idea of taking a swing on a developmental corner here, like Azov Frazier, someone like that. For me, I think if it's either Frazier or Ransaw, they have Ransaw as a safety in here. I'm not sure if that's really where he's going to play. He mostly was a slot for them.
I think he could do nickel stuff for them, which is what they need as well. I mean, they could definitely use some added depth there.
So I think one of Ransaw, Frazier, or if we just want to pretend like we don't care that they have Anderson as maybe their preferred swing tackle considering the contract, maybe one of them. But I like your idea of Zoff Frazier.
I can definitely get behind Frazier, and I think that he does fit that profile of what they want.
He's over 6 foot, rangy player for sure. Would make sense from just a schematic perspective in terms of how they've been focusing on corners. So let's go Zoff Frazier. I think that'd be a fun pick.
Okay, down to 6th round now.
Yep. So now we're down to 185. So we took a chance on a secondary player. I think now you could look at trying to just take a swing on like an interior offensive lineman maybe instead, just to have somebody else in the room. So that's an option. I think even though they took Derek Harmon, this is where like the depth of the defensive interior could make a lot of sense to just grab another guy. Cameron Jackson out of Florida fits the profiles like a true nose tackle. Ty Robinson is that big, long, athletic guy type that they like a lot too. Fairchild, someone they showed a little bit of interest in, or at least at the pro day for Georgia. So all guys that make sense for me here. So it's kind of just pick your flavor of what you want to take a shot at.
Yeah, absolutely. They could double up. The other options would be you could look wide receiver again. You could look offensive tackle again. But I do think that this is where you're getting the most bang for your buck, probably.
You could, if he's here, which I think he's going to go earlier than this, but Ty Felton, Maryland connection, there you go.
Jalen Lane, Virginia Tech connection.
Yeah, Jalen Lane. Yep, so there's that too. Like, receiver's certainly an option here too. Like, I like Keandre Lambert-Smith a decent amount too down the board. So there's a lot of options here. So I think it's just kind of what your flavor of like how are the Steelers going to take a swing on some athletic upside or like a role player fit for one of these picks here.
So what I would want them to do, Shayne, is double up in the defensive line because I think that's where you're getting the guys that fit the size profile you're looking for. A couple of really strong players and anchors here that you could potentially have on that defensive line in a rotational role. But I don't know, being shorthanded on picks, if they're going to be willing to double up. I think it's more likely they go maybe the receiver route at this point. Yeah. And I think Jalen Lane, is a guy that kind of stands out to me, has that connection there to a school that they like, fits kind of a profile of what they're looking for that would complement what they have right
slot
now.
A lot, yeah, which is something that's interesting to think about there. He would make a lot of sense, I think, for sure. To fit kind of with the 2 receivers they have, if we assume that they're keeping them for at least this year. Felton makes sense too, but I do think he's gone. I think at least there's a chance that Lane, Kanata Mupfield out of Pitt, could do a Pitt connection there a little bit. I know some people like him. But I'm okay with Jalen Lane if you think that's kind of the right swing to take here.
Yeah, just doing it predictively. Like, obviously, I would take Dante Thornton, the upside of something like that over that. But if we're doing it predictively, I think that Lane could be here still at this point, and there could be a bit of a connection there. So,
well, there you go.
All right.
So let's finish up with pick 229 here. There could be a lot left on the board, but they really don't.
Oh, yeah, I'd be intrigued by those top couple names on the list: Ty Robinson, Tyler Shuck. Yeah,
I really don't like those guys. So again, this is where now I'm going to throw out a name that I think is more likely to be here than some of these guys are, since we're trying to be predictive. Hunter Wohler gives me major, not only is it the Wisconsin thing, which they tend to try to do, but he gives me major Killebrew vibes. It's like a guy who maybe he's able to play some defense. I think he's a good enough safety to actually be on the defense at times and maybe have more upside as a defender than a Killebrew ever had. But he should be a great special teams kind of guy with his frame and his athleticism for that frame.
Yeah.
Going to play really hard, smart player, kind of fits exactly what the Steelers tend to like. And since we took a corner earlier who has developmental potential, I think taking a special teams ace potential guy here to maybe replace Killebrew could make a lot of sense for this team. So,
yeah, I like that. And I think that's a very strong possibility. You're talking the last pick of the draft here could very well be a safety. The only other thing I would say would be a tackle. Yep. So I think it would come down, if this is how the draft played out, I think it'd come down to those two positions, either more O-line depth or more secondary depth. So I could see it going either way.
Yeah.
So Hunter Wohlen's definitely a real possibility. If we're trying to do this realistically here. So
yeah, I think there's a chance he makes it that far, because I think some teams will view him as just a guy who's not quite good enough of an athlete. I tend to disagree. I think he could be worth a 5th round pick for sure, somewhere in that range. But if he's on the board, he just makes a lot of sense as bring him in. If he doesn't play defense, oh well, he's going to be a good special team. We know how this team values that position. So
before we finish this up though, Shayne, I have to ask you, do you think the Steelers are going to get away with not taking a single offensive lineman in this draft? I know they only have 6 picks, but do you think
I think it's possible. I think it is, because I think they want to see what they have in the guys they have obviously already on the roster. And I think that they believe that if that group can stay primarily healthy, that anyone they take is going to be depth at best, and realistically may never really get a chance to really impact the game or play very much. So if the right guy falls to them in their day 3 picks especially, I think that changes things, obviously, because if you can get a guy that you think has, maybe a low chance of becoming a starter, but at least has a chance to be a starter, it's kind of hard not to give them a chance. So it's just going to come down to how the board falls. The first 3 picks they have, though, I have a hard time thinking it'll be an offensive lineman. After that, a faller could certainly fall into their lap and take that there.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that line of logic. So I'm good taking Hunter Wohler here too, if we want to round out our draft with that.
All right. So with the board we were given, obviously this part of it is the way the PFF board is. So you have to give that situation or take that into consideration. This is our final mock draft for the Steelers without any trades or anything like that. Derek Harmon at pick 21. DJ Giddens at pick 83. Will Howard at pick 123. Zoff Frazier, developmental corner at 156. Jalen Lane at 185, and finally Hunter Wohler, safety out of Wisconsin, at 229.
All right, Shayne, and I know we did this predictively, but would you be satisfied with the draft if it looked like this?
I would. The only thing I'd be worried about is Will Howard. Is he really a guy that you want to take when you have 6 picks in the draft? And I don't view him as anything more than a kind of middling backup type of guy. Yeah. But again, they need to take a quarterback at some point. Probably whoever that is probably has a similar-ish chance of meaning anything as any of the other guys in that range. So it is what it is.
Okay. Fun exercise. Thanks for joining us there. And remember that next week at this time, we will be live the day before the NFL draft. We're going to have an NFL draft roundtable and discussion questions. So come join us for that. Drop your questions in for us. We're also going to give our final predictive 7-round mock drafts. And we try to keep those as accurately as possible. We're going to try to predict what the Steelers will do next Thursday through Saturday in the 2025 NFL draft. We go live on this show every 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. Also check out Josh Yoris' show live on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Thank you for joining us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on Twitter or /X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Still Curtain Steelers podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.